The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys, they let us think that we're big boys, they let us make a lot of noise, but we ain't rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghosts. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Oh, the deeper I fall.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Nephew. Bye-bye.
Yeah, just please take your seat about there. We're with you. It's time for pickup. Start. 2, 1. Boost your ignition and lift off. Okay.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's good to have you along for the ride on this Thursday, August 10th. Friday, August 11th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond, hope you've had a great day and night. We are live right here in the Great White North, on top of the mountains of smoky central British Columbia, as we are here 7 days a week. We welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of the Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We are live at spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Put down the air guitar, get your horns up if you liked our music. Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL is the official music of Spaced Out Radio as he rocks us in and out of every single show. Now, if you're a social media junkie like I am, follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you could follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the U.S. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. And if you go to patreon.com, for as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of SOR as well. Now, if you want to take part in this show, you got to do me a favor. You got to sign into one of the chat rooms, either on Revolution Radio, Spreaker, the UPRN chat room, or you can join us on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, just use the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. I will get to your questions and comments in there as well. Now, if you head to our website for just $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. As of right now, pick up a t-shirt, stickers, posters from our Spaced Out Radio store. More swag is coming. We have the Encounter Online, our paranormal journalist section from Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer. Check out my latest blog there as well. And if you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. We also have some great video content from Tim Doyle of UFOseekers.com and Leslie Mistral Clark's Contact TV. There are secrets in this world that affect us all. However, the majority of the population has literally no clue that they even exist. Scholars, researchers, and even everyday people who have stumbled upon these questions have found the answers are there. But who's hiding them and why are a totally different story. This is where people like Dr. Michael Salla come into play. Dr. Salla is a pioneer in the development of exopolitics, the political study of the key actors, institutions, and processes associated with extraterrestrial life. His interest in exopolitics evolved out of his investigation of the sources of international conflict and its relationship to an extraterrestrial presence that is not acknowledged by the general public, elected officials, or even senior government officials and military officials. The secrets he has uncovered are mind-bending. So mind-bending, it's hard for people to even fathom that much of these topics, from aliens to what the Vatican truly knows, are happening as we speak. Dr. Michael Salla will be with us for the next 2 hours tonight. We welcome you to Spaced Out Radio for the first time, sir. How are you?
Aloha, Dave. I'm well, and thanks for having me on the show.
Well, you must be well, basking in the sunshine of Hawaii, where you make a home. I'm very thankful that you are taking the time to join us. Evening for us, still pretty much relatively early and sunny and warm for you.
It is, yes. It's still daylight. It's just after 6 p.m. here, and beautiful ocean view. So, it's a good life.
I want to get into a little bit about you before we start getting into some very heavy topics here. Dr. Salla, you started out, you're an educated man, you've been a professor at universities. What led you down the path of discovering exopolitics? Because that's not really an expectation that we see a lot of professionals such as yourself do.
Well, it really is an interesting story. I consider it just my professional development as a scholar. I was teaching international politics, and my specialty was international conflict. So I was teaching graduate students in the master's degree program at American University in Washington, D.C. What are the sources of international conflict and how can we resolve that? And then in 2001, I watched Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project, where he had 20 people basically identifying this massive global cover-up of advanced alien technologies and black budget funds and all sorts of nefarious activities that are associated with this advanced technology and extraterrestrial life. And so I realized that this was very important for my understanding international politics. As I continued to kind of do the research, confirm some of the things that those witnesses said, I became convinced that this was very real, that this was actually a deeper level of the kind of onion skin when it comes to understanding international politics. And so after about doing kind of like a year and a half of just doing research into this phenomenon, I decided that I would change my research specialty from international conflict to exopolitics. And because I was a professional scholar, I was an assistant professor, and I was a researcher at American University, it had very deep implications and led to me eventually being kind of basically kicked out of the university because they didn't want to be associated with a scholar researching something that they considered to be just a conspiracy theory, unsubstantiated and all of that.
Did you ever have contact with extraterrestrials? Did you believe in them, or was this something that happened after starting to learn about the Disclosure Project?
Well, at the time, I really didn't have any kind of contact or sightings or anything like that at that time. It really was just an intellectual development, really, because I was looking for answers for, what is it that's driving conflict at an international level. And so, I would read books like William Bramley's Gods of Eden, Jing Ma's Rule by Secrecy, that basically outlined the history of international conflict, but brought up the extraterrestrial element. And I realized that this was a very important factor that just couldn't be excluded. So, it was really a kind of intellectual journey, and there wasn't any kind of contact or any kind of sighting experience for why I made that transition.
Was it a hard decision for you to do? Because you were literally putting your career and your reputation on the line to buy into what a lot of people and a lot of professionals and colleagues that you had would consider, nonsense.
Right. Well, I had my first big shock when I showed the Disclosure Project press conference to a graduate class of 25 students. These were all people studying for master's degrees who had kind of liberal progressive backgrounds, working for kind of like Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, International Committee for the Red Cross, so we're talking about highly principled, motivated people, Peace Corps, ex-Peace Corps workers that were part of this class. And I showed them that video, and out of 25 people, only 2 thought it was credible. The other 23 thought, were either neutral or thought that it was just a load of bunk. And I found that the same kind of attitude from my peers who really didn't think that this was something that, that they wanted to talk about or be associated with. And some were frightened about openly talking about it or kind of like being associated with me in any way in studying this phenomenon. And so, as it turned out, that it was a career-ending move at that time, which I was kind of like, I think I was a bit too idealistic or naive, whichever way you want to look at it. I really thought that a university was a place of higher learning that would be open to the truth, no matter where it came from, no matter how upsetting the information might be. But I realized that, that university truly is an ivory tower, that anything out of the box is excluded, and people pushing those kinds of ideas are simply, booted out of the university system. And I was a very good scholar. I mean, I had a number of books that I'd published. I'd raised grants, large grants from prestigious bodies like the Ford Foundation, the U.S. Institute of Peace. I had good reviews from my classes. So, there was no reason why I couldn't have gone on to get tenure in a major university like the School of International Service at American University. But this topic just made me persona non grata.
And that had to be a very lonely road for you, Dr. Salla, because you worked your life for that position. And in my thinking, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because it is my opinion, but in a place of learning like the university you worked at, they should have been open to this type of thought, because education is about expanding our minds and expanding the universe. And the naivety that they showed with you to actually ask you to leave, that had to be very, very troublesome for you at that time.
Oh, definitely. It had major consequences, major personal consequences. I don't want to kind of get into that too much, but the thing that I missed the most was that at a university, you have college where you can debate ideas, with people who are able to kind of like think in a very critical way on difficult topics. And so I was very used to that. Having gotten a PhD and gone through the process of having a number of positions in Australia and the United States, and so when the university basically removed me, asked me to leave, then I was very lonely, because all of a sudden I didn't have people who could kind of like engage with this material. And when I started to interact with people from the UFO community, I found so many people that had this kind of doctrinal approach to ufology, that it had to be studied in a particular way, and anyone not kind of following that UFO orthodoxy all of a sudden was on the outer. And so I found that a lot of people kind of like studying ufology, writing about it, that many of them were kind of like mentally unbalanced, because they would just launch into ad hominem attacks if you started citing people as credible sources. Give you a good example, someone like George Adamski, who I think was a very credible source of information. Not that I believe everything he said about his contact experiences in the 1950s, but I think he was very credible in terms of witnesses, documents, in terms of photographs, many things that he had to support his case. But just to say someone like that was credible, all of a sudden, you became the subject of ad hominem attacks. So that was kind of, part of this lonely journey in a way of going outside of academia and suddenly finding myself in this field that, itself is so divided and kind of like insular in its own way.
Did you start to develop a following of people who were understanding of your plight with the university, number one, but number two, understanding where you were trying to go with the concept of exopolitics? I do know a few years ago when I was having dinner over at Alfred Lambermont Weber's house, when I first started learning about it, he talked very highly of the research that you begun.
Right. Well, there were a number of people that actually were very interested in exopolitics. Fortunately, Stephen Bassett was someone that was very good at organizing the very first exopolitics conferences. He called them X-conferences, and I think he organized 5 of them. And I attended most of them, as did Alfred and a number of others. And so we were discussing exopolitics. And Stephen's approach in terms of, it's not about lights in the sky, it's about lies on the ground. That resonated very much with me. So, Stephen was someone that I, truly felt, was making a contribution to this field. Alfred, we've had kind of our ups and downs over the years. And but certainly he's also made a contribution in his own unique way. Paula Harris, she's another good researcher who's done that. Other people have also contributed to this field of exopolitics as it slowly unfolded. So I've been very happy to find colleagues who are doing research in an area related to exopolitics who have joined with me. And one of the first things I did after I was kicked out of the university was to form the Exopolitics Institute, which is a 501c3 organization in the United States. And so currently we have about 50 advisors from all over the world. We've got a number of programs. And we've remained active over the last 12 years. And, I think the best days are ahead because exopolitics is a discipline whose time, I think, is now coming.
For people who are unsure what exopolitics is, could you break that down for us?
Sure. Well, the simplest way of understanding it is that exopolitics is the study of the political implications of extraterrestrial life. So, we're really trying to understand, if extraterrestrial life is real, if these beings are visiting us from distant star systems or whatever, then what does that mean for global politics? So exopolitics is really a sort of a subfield of politics. Just as you have exobiology that looks at the biology of extraterrestrial life, and you have exoplanetology, which is looking at planets in distant solar systems, so too you have exopolitics, which is looking at the politics of extraterrestrial life and how that impacts us.
So with that, do you believe then wholeheartedly that extraterrestrial contact has been made and is a part of our everyday life, even though we don't see it for the most part?
I feel very strongly that the issue of UFOs and flying saucers was resolved a long time ago in the 1940s. That in the United States, at least, that the national security officials realized that we are being visited by extraterrestrial life, and so they decided to cover it up while they studied the phenomenon and tried to understand what this meant in terms of the Second World War as it was raging, as flying saucers suddenly started to be kind of encountered by various pilots in different military theaters. There were downed flying saucers in various places, like the Los Angeles air raid in February of 1942. There were multiple instances of extraterrestrial activity, and also the evidence about Nazi Germany seriously developing advanced aviation vehicles based on these flying saucers that the U.S. national security officials believed were extraterrestrial in origin. And so you can imagine how they would have reacted. Here they are in the Second World War fighting Nazi Germany and Japan and Italy, and realizing that the Germans and the Italians were collaborating on developing flying saucers with some of the advanced technologies that were seen or associated with visiting extraterrestrials. So right back during the Second World War, and especially in the latter part of the 1940s, the extraterrestrial phenomenon was a deeply political national security issue that was covered up, even though it was something that really had important bearings on everyone on the planet.
Do you believe then, Dr. Salla, that extraterrestrials have infiltrated our governments? There's a lot of people believe that all the major governments in the world are one way or another run by extraterrestrials or are guided by extraterrestrials as well. I'm not sure I buy that type of story. I think there's a lot of fear-mongering when we get into things like the Queen is a reptilian feeding on virgins, and that's why she's still alive, even though there's a good chance with her very, very easy life that 88 years old is very capable, or she's still capable of being alive, you know, because some of it sounds so far-fetched, but we don't really know.
Well, you know, all we can go on is what different whistleblowers and contactees have said. You know, these are people that say, you know, they've had encounters with extraterrestrials. I mentioned George Adamski, probably one of the most famous, if not the most famous contactee in history. I mean, in the 1950s, I mean, he was a world celebrity. I mean, his books were bestsellers. He got to meet, you know, royal officials, you know, Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands. He got to meet, I believe, Prince Philip or members of the British royal family. He got to travel the world talking about his experiences. And, you know, I mean, in studying his case, I mean, he was very credible. I mean, there are a lot of witnesses that said that, you know, Adamski would show up in a particular city to do a book tour, and all of a sudden there'd be mass UFO sightings. There'd be these flying saucers seen by many people. So, you know, he was not a charlatan, even though many even today consider him to be that. And then you have whistleblowers, and you know, the one that I think is a very credible whistleblower is Command Sergeant Major Robert Dean, retired, who was working at the Supreme Headquarters of the Allied Powers in Europe in the early 1960s, and I believe it was in 1964 he says that he was shown a document called the Assessment that had cosmic top secret clearance. And because he possessed that clearance, that he was able to read through this document. And he says that this document basically showed that there were extraterrestrials that looked just like us, that they were human, and that this was a very serious national security issue because the military, NATO, recognized that these extraterrestrials could easily infiltrate human society. And then you have another credible witness, William Tompkins, who's much more recent. He's 94 now, but he has just written a very popular book called Selected by Extraterrestrials, and he also talks about these human-looking extraterrestrials. He describes them as Nordics, as infiltrating human society, and he says that he actually worked with some of these Nordics that had infiltrated different U.S. companies that were building advanced aerospace vehicles. So, you know, when you look at all of these sources, whistleblowers, contactees, witnesses, some of them with very impressive credentials, the conclusion is that, yes, there are extraterrestrials that look like us, that have been interacting with humanity for a very long time, and that they are more than capable of infiltrating human society, and I believe have infiltrated it for many reasons. You know, some positive, maybe some not so positive, but certainly I think that they have been infiltrating.
What species are infiltrating?
I believe that the predominant ones that have been infiltrating are human-looking extraterrestrials. These are ones that really, I believe, generally speaking, have some kind of genetic connection with humanity, that we have been kind of like bioengineered, if you like, that humanity is a species that has been intervened with or genetically, that we have had different extraterrestrial races intervening with us over a period of 500,000 years or more. There's a very good book by a anthropologist, Dr. Arthur Horn, called Humanity's Extraterrestrial Origins, and he basically goes into the history of human society and identifies different intervention points, going all the way back, several 100,000 years, and even further back than that. But he identifies these intervention points and says that at any one of these intervention points, like the transition from primitive hominids to Neanderthals, or from Neanderthals to Cro-Magnon and so forth, that at these different intervention points, he sees evidence of extraterrestrial intervention. So I think that there's a lot of reliable evidence, archaeological, anthropological, that suggests that humanity has been, to a certain extent, bioengineered by extraterrestrials. And I think, the fact that we're bioengineered means that, we look like them, or they look like us. So that's why I think that they can very easily infiltrate. But, I don't think that there's just human-looking extraterrestrials that are visiting our world. There are also kind of very different groups, they're described as greys, kind of like, the literature is filled with people having abduction experiences with grey extraterrestrials. And then, of course, you have the stories, the David Icke stories of reptilians, shapeshifters. So, I think also we have cases of that as well. But by and large, I think the predominant group that have infiltrated humanity are these human-looking extraterrestrials.
Do you believe, then, that they hold some sort of power, or do the people still hold the power while getting influenced about how we can expand into a solar or galactic species?
Oh, that's a really good question, Dave. How do you measure power? I mean, do you measure power by the number of nuclear missiles and bombers, strategic bombers you have? Do you measure power in terms of your influence over kind of international institutions? Or do you measure power in terms of control of narratives? And when you look at all of those measurements of power, I think we could kind of find the same groups. These are kind of like elite industrialists, mega corporations, that basically are part of the military-industrial complex, that are kind of like the major factors in international banking and international financial transactions, and also in terms of controlling the media. The media, the mainstream media, is very highly controlled in terms of putting out a particular narrative. So all of these things, I think, are controlled by elites, and the human-looking extraterrestrials that have infiltrated society, I think that they've been taking a much more grassroots approach of trying to help us, expand our minds. This is the common person to kind of like be more open to things like higher consciousness, to kind of like a galactic community out there, and kind of slowly prep us for that day when the secrecy system will collapse. And I think that that's their power has been mainly a kind of like a grassroots cultural effort. This is the human-looking ones. As for the reptilian groups, I think that they actually have a long history of working with global elites. This is what Jim Mars said in his book Rule by Secrecy. William Bramley, also Gods of Eden, and I think that yes, when we're looking at the ruling bloodline families on the planet, the ones that control the mega corporations, that control the banks, that control the newspapers, that these are the groups that probably are more likely to have a kind of reptilian connection in some way.
How many species do you believe are visiting this planet right now?
I I believe, and there I can cite a number of different sources that talk about this, but somewhere in the range of around maybe 50 to 60 different extraterrestrial races, kind of like interacting with humanity at some level. I think there are many more different extraterrestrial groups out there that are observing us from a distance, but the ones that are interacting with us are the ones that have some kind of genetic connection with us. Predominantly they're human, and I think that predominantly they're friendly, but there are a few that are not human-looking and are not friendly.
Have you ever met any?
I can honestly say that I have had some, I've had some kind of UFO sightings. I had a very strange experience on Mauna Kea, one of the big mountains, or the biggest mountain here in the Hawaiian Islands, where my wife and I were climbing up the mountain, and there was some kind of whirlwind that kind of approached us. It wasn't anything related to the weather. It was some kind of advanced technology, but that, I don't know if that was some sort of extraterrestrial related or something else. But it could have been like a secret government interaction. I did have an experience that I've shared a few times back around 1985, where I recall some blue beings, kind of blue shimmering lights, very translucent, in my bedroom one night when I was kind of like very upset, emotionally very upset over, a relationship had broken up. So I was kind of very down, and these beings suddenly appeared in my room. I was in this kind of like, not asleep, but not fully awake. I was kind of in that intervening kind of state of consciousness, and these beings were in my room, and there were about 2 or 3 of them, and all I could feel was a lot of love, a lot of positive energy coming from them, and I got this feeling that they were family. That was what I remember at that time. I got that feeling, and I was a little confused because at the time I thought, well, my family, this isn't my human family. I mean, who are these beings? And that was it. I mean, I kind of forgot all about that. And it kind of like went into the back of my mind, and went on with my university studies, and eventually became an academic, and kind of forgot all about that. And it's only kind of more recently that I remembered that experience and think, well, were these extraterrestrials? Were these interdimensionals? I don't know. I really don't know. But they definitely were very loving beings, that had this kind of blue translucent form that were very human looking.
Last ET contact I had was a week ago tonight. Wow. And they were actually running around my yard. And I could hear them doing this weird clicking sound. And I was talking to a good friend of mine and a good friend of this show, R. Keith Andrews. He's our resident ET expert. And I had him on the phone, and I said, I keep hearing this clicking sound. And I tried to emulate it, not very well, and Keith says, well, does it sound more like this? And he made the noise. I'm like, that's it. That's it. I said, one is coming from up my driveway. The other one is in my backyard. He's like, well, you actually have 3 there. And he goes, they're not really understanding right now why you're not running inside and you're not afraid. I said, well, bring them on over. I said, it's time for us to have a conversation. They never showed up face to face. But I heard them.
Very interesting.
It was kind of cool. And you know what, Dr. Salla, I'm someone who has had contact with 5 extraterrestrials, 3 different species, over, let's say, since 2014. I don't know what the guys were in the back. I think they were grays. But I do believe they are here. I do believe that they are studying us. I do believe they have a keen interest, and I don't believe that all of them are of a negative connotation. What is your opinion in regards to whether or not they are coming down here to be benevolent to help us out or malevolent to harm us?
Oh, yeah, again, a difficult question. I did actually write a book called Galactic Diplomacy, where I talked about the 19 different extraterrestrial races that different contactees, experiences, and whistleblowers talk about, and separated them into those categories of, those that were essentially working secretly working with the government or the military-industrial complex in developing advanced technologies. And, I regarded them as kind of like generally negative, but, from their perspective, it's like, well, they're just giving advanced technologies to our kind of military organizations and industrialists who are developing these, and in exchange they're giving the extraterrestrials some of the things that they want. And on the other hand, there were the kind of more human-looking races kind of interacting, doing consciousness-raising things, looking after the oceans, looking after the kind of like the energetic field of the planet Earth, and kind of like things that we would consider to be positive. So they were the more human-looking ones. So definitely there's a mix. But when you get into, who's good, who's bad, I think a lot has to do with the consciousness of the people who are interacting with, because, from the perspective of, say, an Air Force general, I mean, he might think that the Greys and the Reptilian are great because they share technologies with them, whereas the kind of human-looking extraterrestrials will just preach, galactic philosophy to them. And so the Air Force general will think, well, those human-looking Nordics, I mean, they're a waste of time. They're just going to preach to me. But, these reptilians and Greys, they're going to help us with some hard technology that we can use to improve our weapons technology and our strategic position. So, it all depends on the perspective of who's interacting with them.
We like to get our audience involved with this show because that's what makes us a little bit different. Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions that we have lining up here?
Sure, happy.
Excellent. Let's get to Robin's question. He says, I have been reading that before Atlantis, there were two planets, Maldek and Lemuria. Both planets were destroyed by disease, Maldek being a female planet and Lemuria being a male-based planet. This is how Atlantis was made. The asteroid belt is what is left of Maldek. Sumerians have this event on their tablets. Do you think, then, man is actually God?
Okay, interesting questions. I think that there was a planet, Maldek, in the asteroid belt. Whether it was called Maldek or something else, people have different names for it. But Maldek will do. That was a planet, and I think that based on my understanding, both the Moon and Mars, our Moon, were actually satellites of the planet Maldek. And that as a consequence of Maldek being destroyed, the planet Mars was just bombarded by the debris field from Maldek, which is why, roughly one half of Mars shows evidence of massive asteroid impacts, whereas the other half kind of like doesn't show that kind of those kinds of signs. And so that would have happened if Maldek and Mars were in close proximity when Maldek exploded. And also the Moon, there are, Emanuel Velikovsky talked about the Moon as being a recent arrival to our Earth, that ancient historians talked about a time before the Moon, like the pre-lunar peoples. So I think it's very possible that the Moon arrived, that it's an artificial satellite, around the and it's being put in Earth's orbit because it was carrying extraterrestrials, that it's really an extraterrestrial base, and that the moon carried these refugees from the planet Maldek, and also the Martians who escaped the destruction from Maldek and from Mars, actually being kind of severely impacted from the debris field. A lot of these beings came to Earth, and they began establishing advanced civilizations. So I think this is where we get the stories of Atlantis and Lemuria, that at least Atlantis was a highly technologically developed society, and I think that part of the reason for that was that the Martians, the Maldekians, that they helped kind of like kickstart or basically conquered certain areas of the world, especially Atlantis, because I think, Antarctica, because I believe Antarctica was the hub of this kind of Atlantis civilization, and that buried under that massive ice sheet the kind of artifacts of these ancient Atlantean cities and the technologies, and some of those technologies are still operating, and that some of the craft that came from Maldek are actually buried under the ice of Antarctica. And I think this is how we had the ruling bloodline families formed, who were originally the Martians, the Maldekians, were considered to be gods, and the bloodline families are the descendants of these gods. So that's where you have the kind of origin of the divine right of kings, and so we ourselves, are we gods? The questioner raised that. Well, I think that there are many that see us as being descendants of these gods.
Let's get to Eric's question. He is saying, Dr. Salla, have you ever seen the catalog of alien species from Russia, and what is your opinion of that, if you have?
I have seen that. I believe it's disinformation. I think there's some credible information in there, but there's a lot in there that I have not come across. I mean, I mentioned my book, Galactic Diplomacy, and I spent a number of years writing that book, and I extensively interviewed and researched dozens of contactees and witnesses and whistleblowers, who basically shared the names, the origins of these different extraterrestrials visiting the Earth. And, when you compare the names and the origins of these beings with what's in that book, that Russian book, I didn't find much congruity at all. So that's why I believe it's disinformation.
Let's head over to Twitter, where Canadian Joe is asking at #SpacedOutRadio, Dr. Salla, do you know if the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs is still operating? Is there an ambassador in place?
Yes, the Office for Outer Space Affairs is still operating. It's part of the treaty system. I can't remember. I think it's the Outer Space Treaty that was signed in the early 1960s. That basically that was created to establish cooperation in space, and the Office for Outer Space Affairs was set up. And in the year 2010, the lady that was running the office, Mazlan Othman, a Malaysian astrophysicist, as I recall, she was invited to the Royal Society in London to basically talk about how the United Nations was preparing for the future scenario of contact with extraterrestrials. And so there were a number of newspaper stories saying that she actually had gone to London to speak as the United Nations representative who would basically be responsible for setting up diplomatic relations for extraterrestrials once they were announced. She has since been replaced. I believe there's an Italian astrophysicist who now heads the office of I forget her name. But yes, the office still continues.
I can honestly say I want that job. I want that job. You know, I deal enough with aliens here. I want that job. Do you think that person in that position has actually made contact?
I know that the United Nations is very much involved with the cover-up of the extraterrestrial phenomenon. Now, that doesn't mean all UN bureaucrats know about it, but certainly I think that the head of the Office for Outer Space Affairs is likely, very likely, almost certain, to be in the loop. And the United Nations has been involved in a number of initiatives to disclose the truth of what's going on. Stephen Greer described one from, I believe it was 1989, that involved the then Secretary General Javier Perez de Cuellar, who was actually involved in an abduction incident. And that was occurring at the time when the United Nations was considering revealing the truth of extraterrestrial visitation. And that abduction incident apparently was the stage to stop the UN from doing that. And but certainly there are people in the United Nations who know all about this extraterrestrial phenomenon and actually may even have set up their own kind of secret space program. That's what Corey Good, who's a more recent whistleblower, has said, that the United Nations set up a program in the that coincided with the end of the Cold War, which is very plausible and certainly kind of fits with the historical development of kind of international politics in terms of how the Cold War ended and why that ended and what happened immediately afterwards.
We have about 4 minutes here before we have to go to break. Do you believe then, switching over to the whole disclosure idea, that it is possible that it is going to happen? I know Stephen Bassett has said numerous times on this show that it's coming. It's coming. I don't see it happening. I think there is too many secrets and too much at risk, and many of these higher-ups don't want to open up that Pandora's box. What's your opinion?
Well, I really believe that this is all about political mobilization. The fact is, if you look at the history of the United States or any country, real political change happens when you have masses of people protesting and demonstrating. We just don't have that with the UFO phenomenon, with the extraterrestrial cover-up. Why that is, I guess because a lot of people just don't care, whereas people did care about civil rights, people did care about women's rights, people did care about abolition and so forth, and so that's why they mobilized. So I think, until we have masses of people preparing to mobilize and go out and kind of protest against the cover-up, then, I think we are going to have governments kind of keeping this secret for a long time. But there's a number of caveats here because, there is a kind of rapidly growing awareness of extraterrestrial life, that more and more people believe it's real, that believe the government is covering it up. And, it's not going to take much for this to grow into a mass movement. But we aren't quite there yet.
What has to happen, in your opinion, to bring disclosure to the forefront?
It's quite simple. Once university students start caring about this and start, wanting to debate it at universities and invite people who have this information to talk about it and begin to mobilize and protest, then this thing is going to really break. Until that time, we're really kind of like just trying to raise awareness. But, the political transitions are going to happen really quickly once university students get on board, once that younger generation begins to mobilize. So just as people mobilize to, have environmentalism taken seriously, kind of like gender rights taken seriously, we have to have something similar occurring, and that has to happen with universities, the younger generation getting out there and protesting, mobilizing, and kind of like getting people enthused about this topic.
Well, first they have to come out of their safe spaces first. Let's be honest. That's getting a little ridiculous, at least in my opinion. When the students come out of their safe spaces and realize there are more important things to actually get behind, I agree with you. I believe that is a strong venue that they could get behind. Are students too scattered right now? In about 30 seconds or less, are students too scattered right now in what to believe and what to pick up as a cause?
I think that hasn't quite been pitched correctly to the students. Often it's been pitched to students, the whole kind of extraterrestrial cover-up as a right to know. And there have been attempts to organize movements, Operation Right to Know, or Stephen Bassett's kind of disclosure project. But I think that when it's presented in a way that deals with a profound societal injustice, then I think students will pay attention. And I believe that there is very massive human rights abuses occurring as a direct result of this extraterrestrial cover-up. People are being abducted, people are being taken into secret laboratories and basically being used as guinea pigs in these horrible experiments in these classified laboratories all around the country and internationally and even in Antarctica. And so once students realize that this is a profound human rights problem that's been ignored, I mean, we're talking slave labor at a massive level,
right,
occurring in places like Antarctica.
Right, sir. I got to cut you off there because we do have to go to our first commercial of the night. Dr. Michael Salla is our guest on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Exopolitics.org is his website. We're going to get more into the Vatican, Antarctica, secret space program. We got 1 hour left with the brilliant doctor. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I'm your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers you need to the experiences you've had with our professional team of researchers. Your information stays 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines report. Fill out your experience today only at spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Nicole Strickland is going to join us. She's a paranormal investigator and an expert on the ghosts of the Queen Mary. We're talking the Queen Mary tomorrow night with Nicole Strickland, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We're live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. What the hell is this, Bill? Quevuaversal. Quevuaversal is your password. Make sure you use your password wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets it each and every night on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can be like Goddess Michelle and Canadian Joe and follow us on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio and at SpacedOutRadio. You can give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Instagram me at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Find us on iTunes, TuneIn, iHeartRadio in the United States. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, our resident guitar god, read up on the encounter online, check out some videos by UFO seekers and Contact TV, and shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. Tonight, for the final hour, for the middle hour here, we have Dr. Michael Salla. In hour number 3 from Forest Moon Paranormal, Eric Cooper is going to join us to talk about his new global paranormal initiative that he is starting and gaining a lot of traction on. But first, we got to talk a little bit about Antarctica with Dr. Michael Salla. Doctor, welcome back.
Thanks, Dave. Antarctica is a fascinating topic. I'm looking forward to sharing some of the information I have.
There was a lot of talk during World War II that the Germans had put a base on Antarctica. And since then, we know there's no fly zones over there. We know there is scientific experimentation going on there from numerous countries around the world having scientists stationed there. But from what you have learned, what is really happening on Antarctica?
Well, Antarctica, as we know from the Perry race maps and the Orontes Phineas maps, was in the recent history ice-free. Roughly 13,000 years ago, Antarctica was ice-free and was really the hub of a flourishing civilization. I believe Antarctica at the time was Atlantis. As Plato described it in the Critias. But there was a pole shift, and all of a sudden Atlantis moved from being in the kind of tropics of the southern hemisphere into now being the new South Pole, and it froze over. And all of that ancient technology, all that vast river system, all now was underneath a massive ice sheet. But it meant that in the modern era, if you could navigate the underground kind of river systems, the passageways into the interior of Antarctica, you could find these ancient cavern systems where there were artifacts dating all the way back to Atlantis. So, to kind of cut a long story short, during the Second World War, the Germans succeeded in doing that. They were able to build submarines. And during the Second World War, the German submarines were the most advanced of all the Allied power, of all the conflicting powers. Their Type 21 U-boat, for example, became the prototype for the modern submarine. So the Germans were way ahead in submarine technology. So they were able to send their submarines down into the interior of Antarctica, navigating these river systems under the ice sheet, and then finding these big caverns to build out huge bases. So that's what they did during the Second World War. And of course, conventional history is all about Nazi Germany's suffering and defeat, but it doesn't talk about this Antarctic outpost established by the Germans, and that the Germans continued their advanced weapons technologies, their flying saucer research projects, and they were very successful in developing those, so that by the time Admiral Byrd led the Operation High Jump expedition down to Antarctica in 1947, the Germans had successfully weaponized their flying saucers with laser technology, so they were able to defeat the US. So that set in place, a whole process of negotiations. It was all done secretly, and eventually the US and the Germans in Antarctica reached an agreement, and they basically shared technologies, shared personnel, but the Germans in Antarctica got the better end of the deal. They were able to kind of infiltrate the US, bringing in thousands of Operation Paperclip scientists, putting them into senior positions in the military-industrial complex. But the Germans have been active in Antarctica ever since. But what has happened is that many other nations have also become active in Antarctica on the surface. So, in the interior of Antarctica, underneath the 2-mile ice sheet, you have the German bases who have been collaborating since the 1950s with major U.S. corporations and with the U.S. In various ways, and that on the surface of Antarctica, you have roughly 50 nations now that have all signed the Antarctic Treaty, which is basically establishing Antarctica as a military-free zone, as a place where any kind of military development doesn't occur. So, the Antarctic Treaty basically stipulates only peaceful scientific pursuits in Antarctica. But of course, many of the nations on the surface of Antarctica aren't aware of what's happening under the ice shelf with these German bases that have since kind of expanded with the entry of the American military complex into some kind of very vast complexes, which continue to use, some of the same practices of Nazi Germany in terms of slave labor. That still happens in these underground bases run by the Germans.
So what do you think we are hiding down there? Are we hiding alien technology because there are no fly zones over it? Are we hiding, human experimentation, maybe human hybrid experimentation? What do you think goes on? And have you talked to sources who know what is going on down there?
Yes, I've spoken to a few sources. One in particular says that he was taken down there a couple of times to see the bases that were built by the Germans and expanded with the aid of the U.S. military-industrial complex into these huge industrial centers under the Antarctic ice sheet. This is Corey Good. He says that he was also taken down into Antarctica at the beginning of 2017, this year in January, that he was taken down there, and he saw some of the ancient artifacts that have been excavated since 2002. That the Antarctic ice sheet is starting to melt because of the extensive thermal activity in Antarctica. That seems to be increasing. So more and more the ice sheet is melting, and we know that. We're seeing the Larsen ice sheet carving, but also on the surface of Antarctica, because more and more the ice is melting, they're starting to discover things on the surface, like on the mountain sides up there, that date back to ancient Atlantis. But the most technology is still buried under the ice sheet. So this is where many nations, the major nations, the United States, Russia, China, are furiously digging these, mile-long, tunnels into the Antarctic ice sheet so that they could get access to these ancient artifacts that date back from Atlantis. And so, everyone is going down there. So there's a race now for kind of like, seeing who can get to these ancient artifacts first, because, these have very advanced technologies. And so the major nations hope that they can kind of like, have their own rival space programs kind of like kick-started or, improved because of these discoveries. You also have the German kind of US collaboration in these major industrial areas under the ice shelf, also doing these explorations. So there's a lot of activity in Antarctica, and that kind of helps explain why in the Antarctic summer of 2016 and early 2017, you had so many visitors, so many major visitors going down to Antarctica. People like John Kerry, Buzz Aldrin, the Russian Patriarch going down there, Australia's Governor General going down there. Even Obama went down to Bariloche in Argentina in early 2016, and that's it's a very short distance from there to Antarctica. So I believe all of that is due to the excavations that are happening down there. According to Corey Good, there are plans to announce the discovery of these ancient artifacts in Antarctica, that'll be a way of kind of like slowly prepping people for the more elaborate disclosures concerning secret space programs and eventually extraterrestrial life, that they plan to roll out over the decades ahead.
Do you think there is a combination of aliens and humans working on Antarctica right now?
I believe there is extensive collaboration between humans and extraterrestrials down there in Antarctica. And we also need to factor in these inner Earth civilizations. One of the kind of more fascinating aspects to that whole Antarctica mystery, especially Operation High Jump, was that Admiral Byrd travelled flew a plane towards the South Pole, kind of mapping survey, and literally disappeared for a few hours. The base there at Little America thought the worst, that maybe he got lost or crashed or something, because he didn't return back in time. But when he did return back, eventually he started talking about a new force that can fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds, and he talked about that at in Chile at a press conference where he announced that, and in an alleged diary that's still very controversial, he says that he actually met these inner Earth beings called the Ariani, and the Ariani appear to be, if it's true, if it's accurate, and I think there's every reason to think that the diary has substantial elements of the truth in it, that Byrd did meet with representatives from a kind of inner Earth civilization that had a message for surface humanity, and that he passed that message on. So, there you have an example of kind of collaboration between Byrd and an inner Earth civilization. And then, of course, you have the stories of the Germans actually collaborating with a reptilian species that had bases in Antarctica. That, in fact, the Germans had been led to the underground cavern system in Antarctica by this reptilian species that wanted to kind of like help the Germans develop a secret space program because they wanted the Germans to join them in as a kind of mercenary force for galactic conflict. So this is something that William Tompkins in particular has talked about. He's the retired aerospace engineer, and he says he first came across this information during the Second World War when he was working in a covert program run by Navy intelligence out of Naval Air Station San Diego, where they had nearly 30 spies, German Americans, embedded in advanced German aerospace programs in Nazi Germany, and that these spies were reporting back about how the Nazis had developed 30 prototypes of different flying saucer craft, and that just over a dozen of these craft actually had been given to the Germans by the reptilian extraterrestrials that were actively helping them with their space program and giving them information about Antarctica in terms of where to go to establish a base so that they could continue to develop their program even if the war was lost.
Do we see more scientific experimentation coming out of Antarctica right now than we would, say, normally any other country? And if so, are they trying to do things to help mankind, or is this where all the secrets stay put? So that way we have a hidden area that mankind is never really going to investigate, whether it's extraterrestrial, whether it's how the Earth was formed, and our basic life history. What do you think?
I think we have both things happening. I think you have major weapons technology companies going down to Antarctica. You know, for example, Lockheed Company had won the Antarctica support grant to basically run the National Science Foundation programs in Antarctica for a number of years. I think it was roughly around 2011 that they won that, and then it was handed over to another major military contractor called Leidos. And both Leidos and Lockheed, both of these specialize in kind of aerospace weapons technologies. And their real purpose for being in Antarctica was not to help scientists doing kind of legitimate research into the environment and look into the kind of ancient history of Antarctica. Their real job was to find these ancient artifacts down there in Antarctica and to study them and see if any of them could be used for the weapons programs that the military-industrial complex is pursuing. So on the one hand, you have major corporations and the military-industrial complex really kind of like keeping Antarctica as a no-fly zone, kind of like kept away from the prying eyes of the world community because there are many hidden technological treasures in Antarctica, and they want to find those, not because they want to share it for the benefit of all humanity, but because they want to see their relevance for kind of weapons technology processes. And then you have legitimate scientists who are there who are studying the environment in Antarctica, that I believe some of them have been given access to some of the kind of artifacts that have been sanitized of all kind of like extraterrestrial elements, but still have the kind of the signature of an advanced society, so that when the scientists are given the green light to talk about it, it'll be a major kind of revelation for the world scientific community. But I think that's going to be just a heavily sanitized version of what's really going on in Antarctica.
Should mankind, like us, normal everyday people, be concerned about what is going on down there? Or is it best not to know?
No, I think we have to know. I think that's part of our process. Ignorance basically is passive permission for injustice to continue. We see that all the time. If you're ignorant or continue to maintain ignorance, then horrible abuses can go on. This is often how kind of abuse occurs in families, because of people choosing to remain in the dark. So we need to know what's going on in Antarctica. We need to know that there are major aerospace companies doing weapons development under the ice sheets of Antarctica in these hidden industrial centers that have been developed in conjunction with this German colony that was established in Antarctica immediately after the Second World War. They're doing kind of like advanced cloning experiments down there. They're developing advanced bioengineered weapons, viruses, and they're basically excavating these ancient Atlantean artifacts and technologies to see which of those could be used for the weapons program. So we need to expose this, because I think out of transparency, when we have full transparency into what governments are doing, what corporations are doing, then you can actually have responsible people coming in to have oversight of these programs. I think that there's always a place for secrecy, because we don't want anyone to know how to build a nuclear weapon or advanced kind of like a virus or something. But we always need to have oversight. We always need to have, people of integrity exercising oversight. We need to have Congress, people who are truly representative of the interests of humanity, rather than a bored-out Congress, such as occurs in the United States, where basically these powerful industrial lobby groups control the U.S. Congress. We need to have members of Congress who are there because of integrity, because they can't be bought out by a lobby group that's going to ensure they get re-elected. And once you have genuine representative government, then that's how you're going to have efficient oversight of these advanced technology projects, whether they're occurring in Antarctica, whether they're occurring in deep underground military bases in the United States or in Canada. We always need to have oversight by people of integrity who are given the power to go in and investigate what's truly happening in government, military projects, and corporations. You cannot ignore corporations, because that's where a lot of this stuff is being developed, and that's a major oversight if we don't do that.
We were talking about R. Keith Andrews earlier today when I was telling you about what was happening on my yard last hour, and his question for you is, Dr. Salla, do you know of any plans in place on how to set up an interplanetary relations with the off-worlders and or ancient races?
Well, that has happened. That's been going on for a long time. We in my book, Galactic Diplomacy, I lay that out. There are treaties between the Eisenhower administration was the first to establish treaties with different representatives of extraterrestrial civilization. Then you have a kind of more a citizen diplomacy type thing, where you have the contactees that were having kind of like interactions with different extraterrestrial civilizations and sharing that information. I mentioned George Adamski. There have been many others who have also had that kind of contact and kind of like being citizen ambassadors, really, helping bring back to the rest of humanity the message from these human-looking extraterrestrials, which is generally one of peaceful coexistence, one where there's a galactic community out there that, once we develop ethically and spiritually more, expand our consciousness, then we'll be ready to meet with them and have kind of full-blown diplomatic relations. But if we continue to kind of like live in this schizophrenic world where, these elites control these advanced technology programs in inaccessible places on the planet, while the majority of the 7 billion on the planet are kept in the dark, then, we're going to be a pariah. We're going to be kind of quarantined to an extent from the rest of the galactic community.
I want to shift gears here, if you don't mind, because this is a topic that we have brought up a few times on this show, and I think it's important to get to it, especially with your vast knowledge in studying it. What is the role of the Vatican and the secrets they hide regarding extraterrestrials and mankind, basically?
Well, the Vatican really is a very important player in all of this. The Vatican, people might not be aware of this, but the Vatican has the world's oldest intelligence service. It goes all the way back to the Inquisition. The Vatican has a vast library going back to the times of ancient Egypt. The Library of Alexandria, a lot of those books ended up going into the Vatican Library, and these books talk extensively about humanity's long history with extraterrestrials. So the Vatican knows about our extraterrestrial history, and they are also very much a part of the kind of like official diplomatic relations that the Eisenhower administration embarked on with extraterrestrials. The Vatican had a representative at the initial meetings with the extraterrestrials at Edwards Air Force Base and subsequently. And the Vatican more recently has been playing a very important role in trying to basically prepare the Catholic world in particular, but more generally the world, for the existence of friendly extraterrestrial life. And so you have, in 2008, the chief Vatican astronomer, Father or Brother Gabriel Funes, he actually gave an interview with the Vatican's leading newspaper, L'Osservatore Romano, where he talked about extraterrestrials as our brothers. And he talked about such things as extraterrestrials being baptized into the Christian religion. So since actually it was Father Funes, since Father Funes made those statements, there have been other Catholic theologians, astronomers, who have made similar kinds of statements. One in particular, Brother Guy Consolmagno, has actually written a book about baptizing extraterrestrials. The Vatican has organized astrobiology conferences about the theological and the sociological implications of the discovery of extraterrestrial life. And Pope Francis actually put out a major statement where he referred to extraterrestrials using the euphemism of beings of the universe, and said that these quote beings of the universe can play a part in God's plan of evolution. And so there, what he did in that statement was laying the basis for an eventual statement that the Vatican is going to endorse, that extraterrestrials played a role in the bioengineering of humanity. That's going to be part of our history that the Vatican is going to reveal and endorse. But they're going to do it in a way where the Catholic Church is going to continue to be relevant, and that the Christian religion will be reformed in a major way to have a kind of galactic component to it, whereby this new kind of Christian, Catholic, extraterrestrial faith system is going to be used to baptize extraterrestrials. And so there's going to be basically the new Catholic Galactic Church, whatever you call it, is going to go out and basically proselytize extraterrestrial worlds with this kind of new Catholic religion.
Do you think that the Vatican setting up their Lucifer telescope in New Mexico was a giant step forward to try and search for that life outside of our planet and in space. And if they are able to find something that they deem as extraterrestrial life, do you think that they would release it to the public? Because, let's face it, the Vatican hasn't been too open with the information they currently have about the history of mankind.
Well, definitely they have not been too open, but I have to say that they have been recently playing a very positive role in getting the scientific community to explore the sociological, political, and theological implications of the discovery of extraterrestrial life, and kind of like emphasizing the idea of extraterrestrials as being friendly. Now, I don't believe that, but I think it's actually a good way of first introducing people to this concept. So certainly, they have played some positive aspects to this, but at the same time, they have been deeply complicit in the cover-up. And I think that they have been hiding the secrecy or the secrets for a long time. Now, I don't think that they're going to reveal all of the truth at once. I think that they're going to reveal things that is going to kind of like fit in with their agenda. But I think it's going to be an important door opener. And then it's going to be up to us in terms of, well, how much more we open the door in bringing in the full truth of what's going on, or are we going to be content with whatever kind of limited disclosure, the Vatican and the intelligence community of the US and other major nations kind of try and roll out?
And I can understand that. I realize that they have to keep some things secret. I mean, their vault of a library would be just impeccable to even just stand in there for an hour and try and figure out what they truly have and know in there. However, there are secrets that are in the public eye that they don't admit to. For instance, there is a belief that John the Baptist is buried under the Vatican in one of the catacombs. There's also the lack of admittance, even though the Vatican owns the Shroud of Turin, which could hold the image of Jesus Christ himself. Why not come out and say, that is, if you know, rather than say, well, it could be, it couldn't be. So the Vatican is used to playing these political games, yet we're supposed to trust them with our lives. It doesn't make sense to do so.
Well, I think we just have to be very aware that the Catholic Church is a very powerful institution that goes back 2,000 years and has a lot of secrets and has a lot of influence. But one of the secrets that I think is worth mentioning is, that the Catholic Church knows that the Book of Enoch actually describes how extraterrestrials actually set up some of the extraterrestrial groups set up the first colonies on the Earth in various regions, and how the flood event, the Great Flood, where Antarctica was frozen over, that is directly connected to these bloodline families or these kind of gods being imprisoned in Antarctica. And so the Book of Enoch actually makes some references there that point to Antarctica as being the place where the fallen angels that are mentioned in the Book of Enoch and also mentioned in the Book of Genesis, that's where they're imprisoned. So the Catholic Church knows all about this, which is why the Church is very much involved in the events in Antarctica. But definitely, I agree. We need to be very wary of what the Catholic Church is doing. They have their own agenda. There's definitely some positive elements there, but we also need to be very suspicious as well.
Have extraterrestrials visited the Vatican?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't know of that happening directly. I know that George Adamski carried messages from these human-looking extraterrestrials to the Vatican and shared that with them. Now, whether he set up a meeting with the Pope between the extraterrestrials, the human-looking extraterrestrials, and the Pope, I'm not sure if he did. I know I believe he says he set up a meeting with President Kennedy and these human-looking extraterrestrials, and this is, one of the factors into why Kennedy was assassinated, because he knew too much and he wanted to get access to more of the information of what was going on. But I think, by and large, the Vatican has been more or less controlled by the kind of more negative extraterrestrial groups. The reptilian group, I think that's probably where you have all these stories of child sacrifices occurring in areas of the Vatican. There's some very bad apples, definitely, in the Vatican that are involved in child sacrifice and so forth. And they may well be involved with some of these more negative extraterrestrial groups.
I believe that they have seen or met with extraterrestrials. I think that's the reason why they are taking some sort of global initiative to try and make contact or see what's out there, especially with the Lucifer program, which a lot of people, including myself, are still weirded out that they would name the telescope after a fallen angel. So there is that controversy as well. The Vatican always seems to be a little bit controversial when it comes to things about what they are hiding, and this on an extraterrestrial scale. Do you believe then that they know about how aliens, whether it's the Anunnaki, whether it's reptilians, or whatever it could be, helped form mankind?
I think the Vatican has a very good idea of the extraterrestrial intervention in human history. I think the Vatican, probably more so than any other global institution, have all the facts, because they've got all of the books from the Library of Alexandria. They have always had the best diplomatic corps. The Vatican diplomatic corps goes back centuries. I mean, they've been doing international diplomacy for centuries. Long before before the United States emerged, or even modern states like France or England. The Vatican had a functioning diplomatic corps and an intelligence service that was worldwide, and so they have all of the ancient knowledge that's been preserved in the Vatican Library that has been extensively studied by their scholars. So I think that they probably know more about humanity's true history than anyone else on the planet, and it's truly very sad that this has not been shared with the rest of humanity. There was a Russian professor, I think in the early 1900s, that was given access to the Vatican Library. I believe his name was Professor Vogel, and he talked about some of the things he'd seen in the Vatican Library, and he said that there was a lot of information there about humanity's extraterrestrial origins. So definitely they know a lot of the truth. And, the fact is now they're playing a kind of more proactive role in educating people about extraterrestrial life, about friendly extraterrestrial life. And personally, I welcome that, because I know there's a lot of kind of evangelical Christians out there who believe all extraterrestrials are demons, and that people that are wanting extraterrestrial contact are kind of like compromised by these demons, which is truly ridiculous. But there are a lot of very smart or evangelical writers out there who are putting this information out. There's Tom Tom Horn is doing it. Steve Quayle is doing it. A number of others are putting out similar information that extraterrestrials are demonic. And I think that's very dangerous because I think, while there is that element with some extraterrestrial groups, I agree with that, the majority of extraterrestrials are very positive and wanting to help humanity kind of get out of this nightmare that we're in. But it's a very difficult situation because we're controlled by elites who keep secrets, and the rest of humanity kind of laugh at people like me and maybe yourself who say we know about this extraterrestrial element.
Does the Vatican have ties to the Bilderbergs or any of this Illuminati elite?
Definitely, yes. The Vatican, especially the Jesuits, they have a lot of the esoteric knowledge. They know a lot about magic, black magic. They know about these kinds of occult practices, and some of the best occultists are Catholics or Jesuits who have been studying this thing for years, and because of their celibacy, they're able to harness that kind of suppressed sexual energy into these pursuits. That's not universally the case because we know that some Catholic priests, pedophiles and so forth, and but I think the majority of them do take their vow of celibacy seriously, and because of that, that suppressed sexual energy kind of really helps them become really good occultists, and so they know a lot about black magic, which makes them very powerful figures in these Illuminati cabal circles. Because when you get to that upper echelon of, the Illuminati, the cabal, it all becomes how much power you wield at a personal occult level. The more powerful psychic abilities you have, the more people will respect you, and the more influence you get. And so certainly I think the Vatican has been doing this for a long time. They have the secrets of the occult secrets, of going back many hundreds, even thousands of years. So they definitely have a lot of influence in the Illuminati circles.
There's a lot of people who also believe that because they think the Illuminati or the Cabal has been infiltrated by some sort of reptilian species, that it may have transformed into the Vatican as well. I don't personally buy that, but what is your opinion on that, Dr. Salla?
I think the Vatican probably has, like any global institution, any major institution, a mix of individuals in terms of their bloodlines, in terms of their agendas. So I think there are some in the Vatican whose bloodlines are in some way infused with these kind of reptilian genetics, who are going to be kind of more aligned with the reptilian agenda. But you have other groups in the Vatican who have a bloodline going back to ancient Atlantis. These gods, these imprisoned gods in Antarctica. The beings that had the kind of elongated skulls that were the kind of gods and demigods of ancient Egypt, that were 12 foot tall, 14 foot tall. That there are some in the Vatican and in the Illuminati who genetically are connected to that group. And then there are others who are all connected genetically to the kind of human-looking extraterrestrials. So I think there's different powerful elite groups out there, and they vie for influence and power. But certainly the reptilian faction has had a lot of power up until recently, but I think that's changing in a major way.
Do you see the Vatican being the only true nation, because they are a sovereign nation, to be the ones who perform full disclosure. When I look at it from an outsider's perspective, if I'm in the U.S. government, hypothetically, and impossible because I'm Canadian, but if I'm in the U.S. government and holding a title and I think, what's the easiest way to bring disclosure to humanity with being able to hold on to my own secrets, whether it's technology, contact, trading technology for humans, like we believe with President Eisenhower, my first thought is through religion, which would be the Vatican. Could the Vatican be the major player when it comes to full-on disclosure, rather than Russia, the United States, China, or any other country in the world?
I think that's very, very possible. You know, when we look at the United States, there have been a number of presidents who have said that they want to get to the bottom of the ET issue, and in the end they haven't succeeded. President Carter did, President Clinton did, even President Obama, his administration, we know from John Podesta, was involved in trying to get the truth out, but they couldn't. We know that the Russian president is informed about this. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev gave an interview where he talked about the Russian president being given a file on extraterrestrials living amongst us. That was done. That was revealed in a hot microphone incident from around 2012. But the Russians haven't disclosed. And I think the disclosure won't happen until the Vatican is on board. And I think the Vatican, for the reasons that I've been describing, is a very powerful player when it comes to the secrecy system of extraterrestrials. And so when disclosure happens, it'll be because the Vatican is on board. And I think the Vatican is very much on board. I think the meeting between the Pope Francis and the Russian Patriarch that occurred in 2016 was a very significant event, because it basically was the first time in 1,000 years that the kind of leader of the Catholic Church met with the leader, or the most prominent leader of the Orthodox Christian world. So that's over 1,000 years of history that was overcome by that meeting. And immediately after that meeting, the Russian Patriarch Kirill went down to Antarctica. So, what you have there is a collaboration between the Russian Church and the Catholic Church in basically setting the groundwork for cooperation in moving forward with a disclosure concerning what's going on in Antarctica and disclosure of extraterrestrial life. And that can happen pretty quickly. One of the scenarios that I'm told is very, very possible is that you can have Pope Francis, along with a couple of other prominent religious leaders, being accompanied by a Nordic extraterrestrial or a human-looking extraterrestrial in St. Peter's Basilica or some major public arena, and basically announcing to the world the existence of extraterrestrial life. So, that's also a real possibility. But I think the key thing to keep in mind, which, I agree with what you were saying, is that the Vatican is going to be a major player in the disclosure announcement and what subsequently happens after that.
I think that's the only way that you can keep some sort of semblance of mankind in line. With over 1.3 billion Catholics around the world and the subsidiary groups and religions who branch off of that, I strongly believe, in my opinion only, maybe you can concur or decline what I say, but I strongly believe that that's the only way that we are going to be able to handle any type of disclosure with any sort of clarity, because when disclosure happens, if it does come from a government, there's going to be a lot of mass confusion. And I really believe it opens up a dangerous Pandora's box. Yet with the Vatican, I see it a heck of a lot more smoother.
Absolutely. That is the most important thing to keep in mind, that those that are considering official disclosure of all of this information, one of the first things they're going to look at is what is going to be the effect on the mass population. Is there going to be a mass panic? Is that going to lead to riots in the street? Is that going to lead to a collapse of the stock market, bank runs, and so forth? Or will it be something that is accepted as just a new reality, and people just kind of like show up for work the next day discussing this new reality? And I think that institutions like the Catholic Church are going to be a major factor in ensuring that there's a smooth transition from a pre-disclosure world into this post-disclosure world. And I think the Catholic Church is given all of the indications that it is ready to play that role and wants to play that role. And I think, the bottom line is that, the people running the Catholic Church are pragmatists. They see that the Catholic Church has no future in the developed countries in terms of, just the loss of membership, and that something like this, where the Catholic Church can be a bridge between humanity as it is today with this kind of galactic society of the future, that the Catholic Church is going to leverage that to make itself relevant in a post-disclosure world and kind of like fill up the churches again with lots of enthusiastic young people.
Dr. Salla, I hate to say this, but we literally have about 90 seconds with you. I told you this was going to be the fastest 2-hour interview you ever did, and I think I'm right. I can't believe it's over.
Indeed you did, Doug. Yeah, things have gone really quick, and I really just kind of want to emphasize that everyone that listening to this show, we all have a role to play, because I think what's going to help the disclosure process move forward is all of us sharing this information with family members, with friends, and just kind of like sharing with them what we know. Even if people are skeptical and laugh at our face, we've got to have the courage to share that, because they're going to take it in at a subconscious level, whether they agree or not. They're going to take it in so that when a disclosure announcement happens, then people are going to be prepared in some way. And I think that's really important, and why I think shows like yours is so really important, because you give people a platform to hear about all this information. So, thank you, Dave, for just having me on your show and being able to talk about this.
Well, I hope we can do it again sometime soon. Thank you so much, Dr. Salla.
You're welcome, and if people want to learn more about my work, they can just go to my website, exopolitics.org.
Dr. Michael Salla on Spaced Out Radio tonight. We thank you so much for being with us. Much appreciate your time. We will be right back with more Spaced Out Radio right after this. Hour number 3, I'm going to be joined by Forest Moon Paranormal's Eric Cooper. And what we're going to talk about is this global paranormal initiative that he started after way too many conversations around the SOR campfire with me and others about what is wrong with the paranormal. We're going to get into some aliens as well. Once again, Dr. Michael Salla's website, exopolitics.org. Check it on out. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this break.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers, whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange. The Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
A child grew up too fast, went running wild. Now we don't know who to pray to.
Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. How's it going there, space travelers? Tomorrow night on the program, we get into the paranormal. Nicole Strickland is going to join us. She's an author, paranormal researcher, and tour guide of the ghosts of the Queen Mary. We're going to learn all about the haunted ship tomorrow night at spacedoutradio.com, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. We welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are also live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We're live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Apparently last hour, we had a spelling mistake in it. Quaquaversal. Quaquaversal is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, space travelers. As Bill sets a password, error-filled or not, each and every night, right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect with us live during the show. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. We're also on iHeartRadio in the United States. Our website is spacedoutradio.com with a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can shop at our SOR store, pick up a t-shirt, listen to some Bumblefoot, watch Contact TV or UFO Seeker videos, and read up on the encounter online and so much more. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. For the final hour tonight, we're stepping into the paranormal realm here, because a good friend of this show, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal, you've heard him on a number of times, talking about all sorts of different topics, from the paranormal to astral travel to just filling in because, well, that's what we do, because he's a good friend and supporter of what we do around here. But over the last couple of weeks, Eric got pissed off. And he got upset with the way the paranormal field has been going, which he sees in his own group on Facebook, as well as the numerous discussions we have had here on Spaced Out Radio regarding the fact that there is really no handbook in the paranormal field on how to investigate what we are trying to accomplish, what we are looking for, what are the answers, what is scientific, what isn't. So instead of bitching and griping about it, Eric is actually trying to do something to help. Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal, thank you so much again for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight, my friend. How are you?
Oh, good. Good. And
now,
yeah, things are exploding with our plans here.
We're going to get into those plans here momentarily, because I love the idea. And I'm going to be honest with you, and you and I have talked off the air. I'll make it publicly. Anything Spaced Out Radio can do to help you out in regards to help guide other paranormal teams out there towards what you are trying to accomplish, we're going to do that. I want to throw our support 100% behind what you are doing, because your initiative is so strong. It's the basis of what we need as a paranormal Bible, and we're going to get into that. But Eric, take us back as to why you felt that it was time for Forest Moon Paranormal to step up and start creating this guideline?
Well, every time we talk about it, I mean, even on S4, we keep on talking about what's wrong and how to fix it. And it's time to fix it. So what we're doing is making a global paranormal initiative. And I'm using Forest Moon Paranormal as the platform. And I'm using it's a website of paranormal teams called the Paranormal Societies, I believe it is. There's like 4,900 teams just in the United States alone, with another 500 international. So I'm going team by team. I'm looking at them. I'm jumping on their YouTubes. I'm checking them out. I'm sending them basically a blanket email. If they're on board, which there's 15, and I just started doing this, a week ago. And we have about 15 teams globally that are already on board. And basically, and I got to clarify this because I'm being asked this by some of the team leaders. I'm not trying to change their team. I don't care how they investigate. I don't care what they do. I'm not here to change that. We're not taking over anybody. What we want, what we'll be doing is there's going to be a council. Every team leader or founder, whoever's going to represent that team, is going to be on the council. Now, along with that, because one of our pet peeves is there is no science in the paranormal investigation if there's not a scientist or if there's not using scientific theorem. So we're going to have scientists on the panel. Ideally, we're going to have psychiatrists on the panel. And, it's going to go farther than that. So what I've told many of these team leaders is we're not here to change you. We're going to have a teleconference, and we're going to talk about ethics and standards. And we're going to come up with an agreeable code of conduct between all the teams. Now, we're going to outline it, and what they do is take it back to their team. They go over it with their team. They do a sign-in roster, agreeing to these standards. And there you go. Everyone, and, not everyone's on board. I'm getting all kinds of grief. Well, TAPS did the same thing. No, they didn't. There's no scientists in TAPS. Anyway, I get so frustrated because, even some of the comments, well, it's been attempted before. Yeah, but you know what? Not by us. And we've got the resources, ideally, and the personnel to pull this off, that it'll get bigger.
So take us back, though, Eric, as to why this was important. Because I did mention, you and I have talked about this ad nauseum, both on and off the air. I mean, when we've talked off the air, you've heard more swear words out of me in regards to this field than probably anybody has. But what made you finally decide that you needed to do this? What was that one moment that you felt that this was necessary and you were the guy to take that initiative?
I don't know if there was one moment. We've been on Spaced Out Radio for a little over a year now. And you've heard my frustration because just about 80% of the cases Forest Moon does is cleaning up another team's mess. Because there is no education. With a lot of teams, there's people sitting around TV watching, paranormal TV and saying, look, let's go find us a ghost. And they get them some cool little T-shirts and business cards, and, well, they use that on TV. It's an EMF meter. Oh, that looks good. Yeah, let's go ahead and get that one. Because they use it on TV. And, I've seen it on some of the team advertisements. We use the same stuff they use on TV. Really? Great. Good for you. It's not going to help you much. But, because, when you actually find something with that EMF meter, what are you going to do? You're going to run out. Now you have a client that's terrified because you found something and you've verified their fears, and you just left them. You left them hanging. Then what happens? Well, fortunately for some of the clients, they have friends that are in other paranormal groups. They go, oh, well, hell, that sounds like a case for Force Moon Paranormal. And we get a phone call or a Facebook message. And the team goes in, finds out what it is, either passes the spirit over, mediates the spirit, or has to go to combat and actually kill off or destroy a malevolent entity. That's what happens. So yeah, you get frustrated, and it's time to fix it.
I can definitely sense that frustration in your voice, and like I said, you and I have had that conversation numerous of times ad nauseum. And I think we were so sick and tired of it because, you try and fix the world. I mean, we all try and do it, but for the most part, we don't take those steps to do it. So how did you finally decide to say, I need to do something about this, Forest Moon needs to do something about this? Because, like you said, Eric, you are taking a lot of heat, but you're also getting a lot of support with this as well.
Oh, yeah. And it's a good feeling when you have a client that comes back to you after the fact and says, you know what, you guys are awesome. Thank you for doing what you did, because my life is so much better now. But when you look at it, you do hear occasionally from other teams that do the same thing. So why can't we pull all these teams together into one platform, one council? We start taking care of the business that needs to be taken care of. And the little groups that go off of TV, they last about a year. And they either get bored or they get terrified. And unfortunately, you have the good teams that get tired of dealing with what we deal with, and they quit. I've had that response a couple times in the last 2 days. Got an email back that said, well, you know what? I'm sorry, but we're not in the field anymore because we're as frustrated as what you are. And good luck, and I hope you're successful, but we got out of the business. And that's unfortunate because there's a lot of good teams that get frustrated. I'm sorry, I guess it's military blood. I don't get frustrated. I get pissed off and get things done. So that's where we're at. And on the same note, with this global initiative we're doing, is training. Because military is all about training. Force Moon Paranormal is all about training. Now, we're going to take these team leaders, and in fact, tomorrow I'll have a meeting, our local normal paranormal meeting, but I've got some new members coming, and we're going to talk about training. What do they want to see on a training matrix? Basically, a training matrix is an Excel spreadsheet with all the training that we're going to do. It's going to go to all the team leaders with the resources they need and testing of what needs to happen with their own team. And they're going to do the training with their own team and then just get me a sign-in roster again that we've done the training. So, and my other frustration, and we've talked about this before, is the fact that paranormal to so many, about 99% of the teams out there, is nothing more than a spirit in a haunting. And I was even told today in another group when I was talking about the initiative, well, we don't need that kind of stuff in our group because we only talk about UFOs. Really? Aren't UFOs part of the paranormal spectrum? So you're telling me I can't talk about paranormal in a UFO group because, well, it's not paranormal. That's the other frustration I have. So part of the training we're doing is actually how to do UFO investigation, how to do Bigfoot investigation, things like that. Get everybody on the same sheet of music.
Now, you mentioned you don't care how other teams investigate, and that it's none of your business because everybody has their own technique. You can't make people investigate any other way or just your own way, pardon me, and I technically agree with that. But I do question, though, how do you expect to get people on the same page if the investigative technique is different? Because we do have the people out there who are claiming scientific research, yet they're not conducting anything scientific. We do have the people out there who are playing Pokemon Ghost because it's just an adventure for them. And then we have the people out there who are actually trying to solve a mystery. Whether or not someone was murdered, whether or not there is life after death, they're actually trying to solve something. So with those, and I'm basing it on just 3 different varieties there. I know there's many, many more. But if we take those 3 main categories, how do you expect to find continuity?
So what I mean by that, I don't care what equipment they use. If they have an EMF meter, so be it. We're going to come up with a standardized method. And if they're on board with it, cool. If they're not, again, everybody's got their own technique. And I'm not going to take that away from their own team. Bottom line to me is the client safe. So they can go in, they can get their picture, they can get their EVP, and in every case, the astral team is going to be involved, which means you're still going to have the spirit crossing, you're still going to have the malevolent entity gone, and they're going to get their picture if that's what they want. So I'm not going to take their method away from them, because I'm not here to control their team. I'm not here to tell them what to do. Bottom line is the end result, which is, to me, the client. And if we happen to prove life after death in the process, using Markham, using Karen, using other scientists we pick up along the way, then we've accomplished multiple goals.
I can understand that, and I can appreciate that. You know me, though, when it comes to investigation, you know how much of a, lack of a better term, what a jerk I can be about it, because I do think there should be some sort of continuity in regards to how people investigate to end some of these games that people are causing, lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. However, I do have to walk a fine line there because on Saturday night I will be conducting my ghost hunt, my charity ghost hunt at the local museum, which in technical reference would be for an evening of entertainment. So I do walk a fine line when I say that, but I'm very concerned in regards to this, Eric, and you and I have talked about this, so I'm not catching you off guard with it. I am very concerned, though, that even though you have this great book that you are creating, this initiative that you are creating for some sort of paranormal unity, which is brutally hard considering how many groups there are, is there no emphasis on strategizing how teams should investigate?
Well, I'm going to say this. The quality of the teams that are coming on board so far already have the same mindset we do. They already have the same goals, and I'm getting the same attitude in that, yeah, we're all sick of these teams that go in, ruin everything, and then we have to clean up the mess. So I'm not getting that feel that we do it in the name of science or we do it. None of these teams have that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? That kind of attitude. So I don't think that's going to be an issue.
How fortunate is that to notice that attitude is not there?
It's not in the teams that are coming in under the initiative. I think that, honestly, I think the teams that have that kind of attitude are the ones that aren't going to be interested in what we're doing because it's not their goal. Their goal is not to enhance the paranormal field. All they want is their 15 minutes of fame or that cool picture that they can say, look, we got a ghost. That's all they're after. So
Right.
Our kind of goal, our kind of initiative is going to be their thing, if you know what I mean.
Very understandable.
Now, for example, we have a doctor, he's a surgeon in India, who's all kinds of excited. He's actually got a diploma in forensic parapsychology. So we're getting people that are accredited, that people that are, actually have a degree behind what they're doing. So these are the kind of people we're actually starting to bring into the platform.
Take us through this manual what is in it? What can people expect if they have a paranormal team out there that, wants to do it the right way? They're tired of seeing this field go to all hell in a handbasket.
It's not so much a manual as, and these, like I say, we're in the beginning phases, so I haven't even come up to that far yet. I'm going to be talking to some instructors, like our wilderness survival instructor. He's going to come up with a checklist for what needs to be taught. He's going to come up with the material. Here's the material you teach. And that'll be pushed out to all the team leaders. They're teaching. We don't have the funds to go traveling across the country and across the world to teach all the teams. That's why we've got to pass it to the team leader to teach their teams. We'll give them the knowledge and the material. They got to teach it. There's actually, and I haven't looked at it yet, but there is actually another team that actually does have a manual that I want to look at, and she's offered it to me. And once I get it, I can look at it, and we'll see, how detailed that manual is, and I might actually use that for the resource for it. Not for the survival, but for the actual investigation portion. So if we can combine the training materials from all these teams that are teaching their own people into one dedicated library that everyone can have access to, a PDF file, whatever, and then we'll get that dispersed out.
Do you see a lot of people wanting to expand on this? Maybe think it's not enough, that more needs to be done because of the attitude that people have in the paranormal field?
I do, and that's the. So I'll send out 200 or 300 emails. I'm up to like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning doing this every night for the last, 2 weeks now, and I'll get maybe 10 emails back, and they're all saying the same thing, that we'd love to be on board. They have a couple questions here and there that are concerns. One of them, like I told you, was we have to change the name of our team. No, that's not what I'm after. I'm not controlling your team. I'm not telling you what to do with your team. That's your team. But you are the representative of your team on the council. That's where the line is.
How many council members will you have?
As many as I need. As many teams as come on board.
A lot of people would say that's not really having any sort of control.
It is and it's not. We're here more for a command center for when they encounter something they don't know what they're dealing with. I guess if that makes sense. If they go into a case and they're using the guidelines that have been created, and all of a sudden they find them a demon, they're going to come back to us and say, oh my God, we found a demon. And we're going to send the astral team in, or if we have a boots on ground team that is close to them, that has a demonologist, and I hate using that word, but someone that's experienced in a malevolent entity, then we'll send them help.
I got a couple questions from the audience here. Ron is asking in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Eric, are you going to formalize it into a society or association adopting bylaws and a code of ethics?
That's the goal. Give me a year. This isn't going to launch until probably about January. That's my launch date. Right now we're in the baby steps and getting the invitations out. But eventually, yeah.
And let's get to a question from Catherine in Spreaker. She is asking, how do you create a set of standards but avoid the stigma of commissions like the Hays or even MUFON? Do you ignore it and charge forward?
Pretty much. Yeah. You have to look at your own path, look at your own goals, and what you see the big picture as. The big picture for me is having a union of teams, all with the same goal and the same, set ethical standards, and the fleas will brush off. I hate that analogy, but you know what I mean. The groups that are only out for a cool picture and an EVP will fall by the wayside.
So let's get to Teresa's question here. How would a team then join your movement?
Go, like I said, we're using Force Moon Paranormal as a platform. What happens is I send them an application. It's our own application, but they add their team into it. And that team leader is a part of the council. Basically, what I'm asking also with the team leaders is, what is your capability? What kind of skill sets do you have in your team? And what do we need to do to enhance it? Do you have a tech guy? Do you have, ideally, I'd like to see a drone operator in all of them too eventually. But do you have a scientist? Can we find more scientists? Can we find psychiatrists? Build up the teams as we go. See where the weaknesses are.
This might be the point of the show where Eric's phone goes dead.
No.
We don't. Usually when Eric is speaking on the show, at least once a show, his phone dies. I thought that happened right there.
No, that's only a 3-hour show.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you never know. I'm always prepared for it, man. Always prepared for it. No, and I understand with what you're saying in regards to everything like that. And I think part of the benefit as you set this up with some sort of standards, like having a scientist, it's going to make a lot of these teams that are out there, Eric, maybe go on Craigslist or Plenty of Fish or whatever. I'm kidding with the Plenty of Fish, but or go on some of these sites, or even email some professors at local high schools or colleges or universities to see if they would be interested in getting involved. Because I think adding the science aspect with someone who is a scientist is something that is necessary for every group out there. I'm fortunate, like if I have a group set up here, I could... my area is a blue-collar logging town. It's going to be difficult for me to find someone of, say, Eric Markham's status up here. So, right. I mean, the benefit is I get to use Markham because he is part of my team. You might know him as the Preacher in the chat room, or if you've listened to the show and the Preacher's been on here. We love the Preacher around here. He's got a good beard going on, too. Not much up top, but that's okay. Right? So we have someone whom we can go to. How important is it to try and have every team that signs up with you to have that individual, not someone who says, yeah, I'll volunteer to do that, and then reads, their grade 8 courses again, but an actual scientist working on board?
Well, that's going to be hard. And again, we have a team in Connecticut. We have a team in, I believe, forming in New York. We have a team that's going to be forming in Montana. Some of those areas will be harder to find a scientist. But if we give them a blanket letter, for example, if we look up universities in their area and we contact them as the headquarters, and I mean, there's ways to do it. It's just a matter of finding someone local to the area. And at best, we've got Markham and Karen, our other scientist, who will be there for sample analysis. Also, Markham's coming up with a scientific protocol, an evidence collection training protocol, and things like that will be passed out to the team leaders. It's not as good as a scientist coming to teach, but it's right there in black and white.
Let's get to more audience questions here. Let's get to Robin's question. He says, Eric, wouldn't you want to know how much experience all these paranormal teams have in the field?
It would be great, but is it logical for me? I mean, all I can do is go by their resume or, their Facebook page or whatnot, and they're telling the truth. But I've got to go by their word. That's about the best I can do. Now, we can do a quality control, contact their client and ask how they performed. And that's another area that we'll be looking at. Quality control is important. Contact the clients of the cases that they've done and ask them, were they professional? What did they find? What happened? If I get complaints, that's okay. We got a complaint, so what's going on? But yeah, it'd be nice to know what their background is.
And that's really the unfortunate part, is you do have to take them at their word. But on the flip side, I see a benefit in having newer groups out there, because now if they're green in the field, you can mold them to the way you want them to investigate, or what you feel is a proper way of investigation. Yes, the debate now becomes, well, what is the proper way? I know my opinion. If you're not there to solve something, don't do it. Don't go into someone's house if you're just there to say, yeah, it's haunted. Okay? You got to go in there trying to solve an issue. Either find a resolution, move the spirit on, or try to solve the mystery of, is there truly life after death? We need to have some sort of goal going in, rather than it's haunted or not, which is taps.
Yeah.
And we got into and we've got into that many a times on this show.
Well, the same with MUFON. And I've got into this with MUFON investigators. You know what? I was with MUFON back in the 90s. I know about MUFON. You don't need to tell me about MUFON. I know all about them. And my experience with MUFON when I was with them as an investigator was they were nothing more than debunkers. They made their experiences feel like crap. And that's not what I'm about. I'm about helping abductees. And for the unfortunate part about that is, like I said, 99% of the teams out there know nothing about abductees or UFOs, because to them, paranormal is nothing more than a spirit or a haunting. And we plan on changing that. Now, if they're absolutely, hands down not into UFOs, which that's not the case I've experienced so far. Most of them they're interested in UFOs. They want to learn about them. They just don't know where to go. You go to MUFON? No. They charge you. They charge you money for their course. And that's great to pay for a course, but not everybody can afford it. So are we taking money from anybody? No, we're not.
Let's get to Dawn's question here. She says, Eric, if you make teams think the decision process will involve them, would it be more apt for them to join?
Yes, it would. And you know what? I've had 3 different leaders ask me, how does it affect us? It doesn't. And it's the same answer. I might as well just copy and paste my answer to all of them. It doesn't affect them. I'm not here to change their team name like when asked. I'm not here to tell them how to investigate. I'm not here to tell them what to do. We're here to enhance their team. We're here to support their team. And we're here to keep their team and their clients safe. That's what we're here for. And training.
Can I butt in there for a second? Because I have no problem in telling them how to investigate. I'd be more than happy to do that. I really would. It brings, very rare do I get to be a jerk, but it brings out the jerk in me seeing some of this. It really does. Let's get a follow-up question from Dawn here. She is asking, Eric, does your team offer services to help look for missing people and such?
Okay. You know what? We tried that. I think it was a year, maybe 2 years ago. We actually had a missing persons division. And it didn't work. It didn't work because everybody thinks they're a medium. Not all the time. Don't think I'm just being rude. But everybody thinks they're a medium. Everybody thinks they've got abilities. Not everybody does. And, well, the person that we were working with actually was a volunteer with the Missing Persons Division for our state, violated our code of ethics. And that was one, to keep the family members of the missing out of the search. at what we were doing. And, well, it come to find out she was pulling family members. To me, that's giving them false hope. If we can't find anything, you just gave that family false hope that we might find something. That goes against what I'm about. You know, keep the family members out until we actually find something. The other problem with what we were doing is the boots on ground aspect. We can have our mediums and our psychics ping on location, but how do you go to law enforcement? Most law enforcement, you tell them, hey, a psychic told me that, and they're going to turn their ears off right there. That was the other part that we couldn't get around. And I don't have the money, again, to go to Colorado to a spot where the missing person might be. And in most of the cases we were doing, they were deceased, and it would have been body, you know, bones, body, whatever. So, yeah, we tried that.
Dennis has a question. Eric, have you made it clear whether you want an actual published book when you do this in January, or just a manual and just place it out there?
It's not going to be a manual. It's not going to be a published book. What we're pushing is the actual council will be pushed out. And that is when we actually get all the team leaders on one page and actually have a conference. If they find that if they have a case or whatever, then that's when we start actually being active. We're going to be active in January. It's not a book. It's not a manual. Again, it's going to be a training matrix, a list of resources they need to train on those topics. Like another topic that we're going to be training on is occult symbolism. Why? Because if you walk into a case and there's a pentacle on a wall or on the floor, what's the pentacle mean? For most of our belief, it's a symbol of protection. Now, if it's inverted, that's a symbol of, in some cases, conjuring. So if you walk into a site and something was actually conjured there, or a demonic entity was, manifested, those are things you want to know before you bring your team in. So, I mean, there's a lot of training that a lot of people don't think about before they just jump off their couch, grab their EMF meter, and go into someone's house. And these are things that I'm brainstorming on that we need training on.
Let's get to another question. This one comes from the SOR Space Travelers Club. Eric, can you address how you will be dispatching the best qualified team members when cases present religious implications?
Okay, so it's going to be up to the team because it's going to be by region or by location. If we get it, we're in these teams will be able to find their own cases, obviously. If they're in Connecticut, if they're in Virginia, they're handling their cases. If they need help, that's when they call on us. If I get a phone call or a Facebook message, whatever, and it's somebody in Pennsylvania, I'm going to send the astral team. If we have a boots-on-ground team in Pennsylvania, I'll be contacting that council member and say, tell them, get your team together. Here's the address. Here's the pre-investigated questionnaire that we've got. Go check it out.
Catherine, go ahead, buddy.
It'll all be phone number based on that case.
Catherine is asking, Eric, what is your number 1 and 2 things you suggest to all paranormal groups that they usually don't follow but should based on its simplicity?
Oh, God, let's see. 2 things that, let's see. Well, I'm not sure if I'm understanding your question right, but confidentiality and professionalism. Is that what she's asking?
Absolutely. And let's break down confidentiality.
Confidentiality. Okay, for what? There's several things to me with confidentiality. Do you go running into this client's house with rip all over your T-shirt when this person, discreetly called you in, now the neighbors know that there's a paranormal team at your house, that falls to me under confidentiality. You go out, you go walk in there, maybe not like a businessman, but like you're a family relative. Nice T-shirt, nice clean pair of jeans, tennis shoes. Just looks like an everyday Joe. Now, when you leave, do you go talking on social media about what you just saw? Like we do. I'll go on and talk about a case, but you won't know where it's at. You don't know the names. You just know, well, we encountered a demon. That's it. Talk about confidentiality. Yeah, you don't talk about case names, locations, things like that. That individual knows their information is safe.
And what about the other part, professionalism?
Professionalism. Do you go there smelling like weed? Or do you have alcohol in your breath? Do you go smoking in their house? Our code of conduct's pretty cut and dried. We don't cuss. If there's kids involved, a parent is with the kids. If it's just common courtesy, which unfortunately some people don't have.
I like the example you gave a long time ago when we talked about this. Take your shoes off when you go into someone's house. Have the respect to take your shoes off.
Did I say that?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Right? Because a lot of people, don't want dirt or mud being tracked through their house. Don't go sitting on their fine furniture. Dress appropriately. If you're a man, shave. If you're a woman, shave.
Oh no, I don't shave my beard.
Well, I know you don't. But I mean, I know, for instance, with the team that I will be putting together up here, it is about image.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be taken professionally, you have to act professionally. And that's basically what you're saying. Right?
Yep.
I think it's a fantastic idea. I really do.
It's moving along. And like I said, we're only in our second week of doing it, or pushing it, and we already got 15 teams, and it's growing daily. So, I think we'll
go ahead.
I think we'll be what we want to be, and ideally, at a minimum, I want 2 teams per state. I want 2 teams per country.
What about Canada? We have 10 provinces and 3 territories.
Okay, a team per province.
Excellent. Now, is it harder to find quality paranormal teams compared to UFO or cryptid researchers, or is it the other way around?
Good luck finding a UFO team. And I'm serious when I say that. I wasn't even exaggerating when I said 99% of the teams out there are straight haunting. That's why I need to get all the teams that are on this initiative on one page. I will train them UFO. I will train them alien abduction signs. I will train them how to, help and abduct you. That's the only way we can do it. And you hit it right on the head. The younger teams that are green will be easier to train. Which teach them the right way. And that includes Bigfoot and UFOs. But, no, it's easier to find a quality haunting team than it is a UFO any day, because there are none. Very few.
Dennis has a question here. He is asking, Eric, how would you get over those people who are suspicious or jaded because of experiences with those less qualified groups or thrill seekers?
That's a hard one, because most of those people don't contact anybody. And I've even had cases where we were getting ready to go, and the client called and said, well, you know what? I'm going to have to tell you to stand down because my wife doesn't want any paranormal people here. Well, that's unfortunate. Because until you get past the stigma of, ghost hunters and all the other crap you see on TV and all the teams that replicate them, that's going to be the hard one. And ideally, with the initiative we're making, we'll be able to change the image. That's another goal. We get nothing but quality teams on board, and we start working and getting active, and the word gets out. That's the other thing. The word gets out that we actually have a council that has standards and is actually getting things done. If you're one of the teams that I've blacklisted, you're not coming on board. And yes, I'm making a blacklist.
Uh-oh.
If it's a team that's...
You're like Santa Claus now with the beard, the blacklist. You got the naughty and nice list, Santa. Paranormal Santa with Eric Cooper right here on Spaced Out Radio.
No, I do. Because, I've even gotten some snide BS comments from some teams that said, well, we've been around for 5 years and we're professionals. We don't need you. If you ever need a real investigator, give us a call. They're not even worth an answer from me. But you just hit my blacklist. You just showed me your ego. If you got that kind of an ego, then, don't come knocking. But no, there's a lot of teams I'm finding out of the 4,900 that are listed from the United States that they have a dead website, they have a dead Facebook, they have a dead YouTube. I'd be willing to bet if I call the phone number that it's either disconnected or they're going to say, oh, we got out of the business a long time ago. Well, then get your damn listing off the Paranormal website. Because you're going to have clients that are calling your number to get help, and they're going to get frustrated after calling 3 phone numbers and finding out that, those 3 groups aren't even active anymore. So, yeah, those ones hit my blacklist, along with the ones with snide comments. And, there's a blacklist.
And flat earthers as well?
You know what? No. I won't blacklist them because that's their belief. Who am I to tell them they're wrong? Okay.
I'm trying to get some sarcasm and snark in there. Now you're bringing it all seriously. That's worth a beard tug. That's a beard tug.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I don't agree with them, but I'm not going to blacklist them for it.
We only got about 5.5, 6 minutes left with you, Coop, and I appreciate you hopping on to do this. We've talked about the backlash that you're kind of getting with this topic here, and I think it's very, very, small-minded, short-sighted by a lot of these groups in there. So how does someone get in touch if they feel that their team would be qualified or wants to learn more of what you're doing?
Like I said, okay, go on Facebook, look for Forest Moon Paranormal, jump into the group. Don't go on the page, join the group. I post, probably about 20 updates a day in the group. And as a group sends in their application and they're accepted, I post, hey, so-and-so from so-and-so is now on the council. That tells them, one, that I've gotten their paperwork, they're accepted, and they're on the council. And it tells the rest of the team, if you see an ad for, this group, then they're validated and they're part of the team. Otherwise, send me an email at medicineeagle, MEDICYNE_eagle @yahoo.com.
This is the point where I like to remind people that you are a 19-and-a-half-year United States Army veteran with 4 tours under your belt. And I always like to bring that up. I know you hate it, Coop, but I love it. I know you don't like the recognition. You did your job, and it was a job and all that kind of stuff. But damn it, man, that was good stuff that you did. Good stuff.
Well, I have no problem with you saying I did my job. It was enjoyable, as hard as that is to believe. I do miss the Army sometimes. But I'm going to tell you right now, veterans make the best paranormal investigators for the simple fact that we don't get scared. We get pissed. And, I had a conversation with somebody in SOAR, as a matter of fact, today, that she was commenting about teams that they go in and find stuff that they didn't expect, and they get scared and run away. And I told her, well, you know what? That's why you need veterans, because veterans will go in and probably scare, that spirit away for the most part. But yeah, and the other thing with veterans is we know training, and we're all about training. And if you don't train your team, then you're not going to be good when it actually comes, when the rubber hits the road.
Would you still be in the United States Army right now if they allowed you to keep your beard?
No, my time's done. I don't think I could handle another tour, to be honest with you.
But if they said, Coop, you're allowed to keep your beard. Come on, Samson.
No, because I've switched roads. My road is paranormal now.
I hear you. I'm just teasing. I want to get to Catherine's question here. She says, the solar eclipse is coming in 10 days. What type of things is Forest Moon Paranormal expecting to go on?
You know what? I haven't even thought about that because, I've been busy. What's going to go on? I really have no idea. I guess wait and see. Keep an eye on the clouds because a lot of the UFO craft that you see today are actually in the clouds. They're actually cloaked, so you might see some more UFOs through the eclipse. As far as energy shift, you will feel a shift in the energy. Just make sure you're grounded. And we can go over grounding in Forest Moon Paranormal if they jump into the group, because I actually think I do have grounding stuff in the library in there.
Interesting question from #SpacedOutRadio on Twitter. Do you have any safeguards in place to keep any alphabet groups out of Forest Moon Paranormal while you're doing this?
I actually have an alphabet group member that keeps an eye on my back. So if we get on any kind of radar, I will know. And he's actually heavily into the paranormal and actually deals with paranormal issues on the government side. So he's one I do trust with my life.
That's interesting. I never knew that. We learned a secret about you. Isn't that
He's
fun?
the one I don't talk about.
Yeah.
He's the one I don't talk about.
And to be honest, I don't blame you. Well, like I said, my friend, if there is any way Spaced Out Radio or our new company formed legitimately today, SOR Media, has any way we can help you out, you make sure you let us know, because the one thing that I really want to see is I really want to see a handbook in this. I really think it's time to do what you're doing, but go one step further eventually and actually create some sort of manual or training program that is in a book form, like Dennis's question had said. I think it's so important for this field to have that, especially as anarchic as it is, that it's a field that's dying for it. So I'm going to tell you on the record, my friend, don't stop with it. You're creating something good. You're creating something very good here. Don't stop with it.
Oh, I won't. You know me, I won't. And as far as a book, here's one thing we can do is get all the team leaders from all these teams together, get their libraries together, go through all the good information for a training manual, get it all published into one book, and there you go. Then we'll publish it. And it'll cover everything from spirit investigation, Bigfoot investigation, UFO, the whole gamut, the whole plethora of paranormal activity in one book.
Nice use of the word plethora there, my friend. You're going to get our listeners drunk with all the plethora-ing. That's just the way it goes around here. Eric Cooper, much always a pleasure to have you on the air, my man. And I'm excited because, well, in about 6 weeks, I'm going to be speaking at the Forest Moon Paranormal Paracon.
Oh, and that's good. Yeah, I can't wait. And actually, we'll make the Paracon, if all the teams can get there after our first year of doing this, we'll make the Paracon our joint roundtable for all the figureheads.
Well, I look forward to it. I will be there. My topic, why I hate the paranormal.
And that's what started this whole thing.
Yes, yes, you will hear my speech at the Forest Moon Paracon in Concrete, Washington, talking about why I hate the paranormal. I really love the field, but it's an eye-opener of a title. Coop, you hold on for a second. I got to wrap this thing up. Listening in the background, Little Brother is Watching by Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, our resident guitar god, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Tomorrow night, we step back into the paranormal field. We head down to California. Nicole Strickland, author, paranormal researcher, tour guide of the Queen Mary. We're going to learn how haunted this hallowed ship is. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to thank everyone listening in. I'll get to you in a moment because I want to tell you about my team. Everett Thiemer, Eric Markham from The Encounter Online, Tim Doyle, Jolene Lammers on web design, Catherine James, social media, Bob Davis, the dulcet tones of our announcer, and our director of business management, Kim Gandy. Keeping us straight, making us bigger, better every single day. Thank you, team. Make sure you thank them as well. But most of the thanks goes to you, the listeners, including you, Dane, finally getting into the chat room. I appreciate that. Everybody in the chat rooms, everybody on Twitter, in the SOR Space Travelers Club, like you, Captain Shirk, Bob Davis, appreciate it. Because together, my friends, when you share the word, we own the night. Talk to you in exactly 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, do us a favor. Take us home.